Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for the More Survivalists, and in this case I want to talk about propaganda, specifically war propaganda given the context of the war in Ukraine, and how it's actually super effective in confusing people and creating a certain narrative, and how sometimes it's very obvious, how sometimes it's not so much, how sometimes people that think they are objectively seeing things are actually the greatest victims of propaganda. Let's look at this, for example, a comment that I got from one of the videos I did recently about a man in Ukraine that lost his wife and 3-month-old baby. One of the comments here is, nobody is denying the war, just some of us use our own critical thinking to see both sides. By using critical thinking, it doesn't mean people are siding with Russia. The propaganda clip from CNN was sad, but the added violence were pure propaganda. So it's double propaganda. So it's the propaganda from the video of the man that, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the man is there showing the bond building and the family he lost. Now, the pure propaganda, according to this person, is the violence. That point is that both sides are using the same tactics and we should focus on the survival lessons and not the politics. No, look, you can do your own channel, do whatever you want. I try to be as objective as possible, and I cover things that I believe are very important. Being aware of how you're being played like a violin, giving pun intended here, is crucial, besides what's happening in Ukraine. And I fully support the poor people in Ukraine that are being slaughtered by a commie dictator like Putin. But you also have to understand this for your own well-being. This is crucial to survival and preparedness. If you don't know how you're being played, how you're being fooled, then you're unable. This is a matter of awareness, really. The fact the video from CNN was one of the least propaganda-like videos, the fact that they put a sad music, well, if a man is talking about his slaughtered family, then you cannot put that much of a cheerful music behind it. But of course, it's going to be having a certain narrative. Now, it's very interesting how many of you guys don't even notice that CNN is really not all that much pro-Ukraine. They very much carefully look at what they're going to be showing or not, so as to have a sentiment of, yes, we're going to be blaming things on the war in Ukraine, but we're not really showing the full extent of the massacre going on there. You actually see a lot of that in other media that is not from the United States. There's a reply here from someone else that says, what a shit take, calling adding violence pure propaganda is just childish. Pure propaganda is what Russia state TV does by inventing narratives about the war and changing them on the go. Every time Russia fails to accomplish some military objective, they move the goalposts and pretend that was the plan all along. Funniest is that some Western critical thinkers fall for that. Also, Russian propaganda blames the war crimes of Bucha on British special services. It is, yes, I completely agree with the idea that the propaganda from Russia is, it is sometimes it just amazing to watch, because it is so making up crap all along. They fail to take Kiev, then they have an excuse for that. They fail to get the president Zelensky to leave the capital, which was obviously the main intent. The idea was showing a running president, and that did not happen. Look also how the United States offered very generously to accommodate for that and take the president of Ukraine out of Ukraine, and famously saying, no, give me more ammunition, I don't need a ride. But the idea was, oh, this is terrible, you have to leave right now. He didn't leave, and the rest we're seeing as it continues to develop. But he mentions about Russia propaganda. This is something that apparently many Americans don't fully understand. Russia propaganda is, targeting the United States almost as much as it's targeting Ukraine. Of course, they go after Ukraine. It makes perfect sense, given that they're trying to take over a country. But beyond that, notice here you have the good example in RT News. This is propaganda directly from the source, directly from the Russian government. So you cannot get any more propaganda than this. Now, I also noticed that in InfoWars, they used to basically copy paste or directly link articles directly out of RT News. So you're seeing websites, American conservative websites, that are directly spreading Russia propaganda without any doubt whatsoever. It actually links directly to RT News and other, I think in Sputnik as well. Those two I've seen several times in InfoWar. So, be aware of that. Now, if you look at RT News, EU member explains why Ukraine accession is unlikely. Always the idea of creating instability, of creating doubt, of creating this, hopelessness for people in Ukraine. You're not going to be getting into NATO. You, in fact, did not get into NATO, and probably for reasons that also benefited some of those NATO member countries. But also look at this. U.S. baby formula shortages is a symptom of a broken system. You guys are broken, according to the honest, lovely people of the Russian government. And still, so many Americans support the idea of Russia as a beacon of freedom in the world, standing against globalism. Are you kidding me? Don't you think that these are the exact opposite to that? Communism is the tyranny of the world. You see it in China, you see it in Russia, you see it in Venezuela, you see it in any other commie crap hole, and any other commie politician, any far left politician will not be able to speak against Russia. This is international. If you look at what political parties across the globe, other than US, unless it's a commie far left political party or figure, they do not. There's no one supporting Russia other than commies and these strange figures on the right in US. Understandably, it is a complicated situation where there are interests from U.S. in having the military contract that we so often talk about. Having a weaker European Union is also something in the interest of the United States. You don't want to have a big player in a global scenario that could compete with you. So a weaker Europe is not particularly bad. This is why you're getting a very strange idea of how things are going. China denies snubbing Zelensky. Of course, China's the one pretending to be on the side and not siding with Russia, which is kind of funny, but that's what they're going for. Grandma Sprouts sends the money to fighters battling Ukrainian forces. How Russia civil society helps support. You cannot make this stuff up. They just make bullshit one after the other. It's, of course, a lot easier to support one side when one is so obviously in the wrong. It is insane how effective propaganda is. How many people, I read the comments here and elsewhere. Again, mostly U.S. You don't see this kind of thing in other places. It's not nearly as bad as it is in America. But how many people think, these two sides that are at war, and this is something that it's not so simple. What is propaganda? The spreading of ideas, information, rumors, for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, cause, or person. Okay, so yes, you're going to be definitely having propaganda that is in favor of Ukraine, right? Anything that is showing the struggle of Ukraine and showing how horrible Russia is, that's going to be used to further the cause of Ukrainians, which makes perfect sense. Of course you would do that, especially at a time of war. Propaganda is used in other ways. I think that propaganda is more, I think of it more as wartime propaganda, especially given how freedom of speech is being attacked all over the world, especially in the United States right now. Interestingly enough, with the Ministry of Truth being almost a reality, and how the idea of, we have to defend from propaganda, so we're going to be limiting freedom of speech. No. Careful with that. And it's very specific, especially when you're talking about wartime propaganda. You're talking about something that is treasonous for someone to do against his own nation. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is directly out of the Constitution of the United States, which says, definition in Article 3, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, treason specifically limited to levying war against the U.S. or adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. So whenever you're aiding and helping an enemy. Not just a political figure or someone with different ideas from the current establishment in the United States. No. Wartime enemies. Someone that is actively attacking and slaughtering and shooting and bombing you. If you aid your enemy as an American, you're committing treason. And treason is punishable by death. The punishment for treason is death in the United States. So whenever you see people so confused, spreading this idea that, look at what's happening in Ukraine, they're rounding up opposition. No. They're rounding up enemies of the country that have been working against the country for a very long time, especially because in the case of Ukraine, they've had for so long puppet government that was at the service of Russia. So you have a lot of elements that are treasonous to Ukrainian people. That's the way it's been, even when they kicked out the puppet Russian from Kiev. That was one of the elements that was honestly treasonous to the people of Ukraine, because it was not same thing with Belarus. You don't have a president there, you have a puppet that is loyal to a dictator in Moscow, to Putin. Now, if you look at propaganda in other areas, yes, of course, it happens on different levels. Take a listen to this from CNBC and let me know if this is not propaganda, in your opinion, in the comment below.
With the fact that we, the United States, did come back faster from the depths of the pandemic due to our vaccination policy, our economic policy. We got back to our GDP level, our pre-pandemic GDP level, 6 months before other countries. We had the highest job growth ever. We had record GDP. You saw...
and it goes on, and he says how Americans have more money than ever before, how salaries are through the roof, so everything is fantastic. So yes, it is propaganda, and it's not about putting violin music so as to make it sound a little bit more pitiful. This is directly lying to your face. When they say that inflation is not so, that inflation is actually good for you, when they say that skyrocketing prices and inflation is something positive, they're lying to your face. That is very much propaganda from the government, and it is intended so as to confuse you and create this false narrative of, oh man, the economy is great, everything is fantastic, what are you even complaining about? But don't lose focus though on specifically wartime propaganda, which is maybe some of the more brutal one. I found this pretty interesting piece. This is from the basic principles of war propaganda, right? This is, you can look this up yourself, but I found it interesting because it's textbook what Russia is doing right now. We don't want war. We are only defending ourselves. We're defending ourselves. Has the United States used this when we're going to be fighting wars over there so we don't have to fight them over here? Really? You have to bomb a peasant in the middle of the desert that doesn't even know you exist so as to defend yourself? Okay, yeah, propaganda as well. Our adversary is solely responsible for this war. Of course, this is the fault of Ukraine because they were thinking of maybe one day joining NATO, even though NATO said, no, you're not going to be joining us, even though other countries joined within a matter of days, but it was denied to Ukraine for years. So there was no threat risk at all. Besides, the point of that, NATO is not an all-encompassing spreading empire that is adding more territory to its empire. You're looking at an alliance that benefits strongly whoever joins, because you're taking up a partnership with a country like the United States that has an economy based on military-industrial manufacturing. So you're benefiting from that through association. You're getting the benefits of a country that wants to make war spending so as to justify their economy. And yeah, that's something that helps you greatly. That's why countries have joined NATO all along. That's why Donald Trump famously told, hey, you're not spending as much money as you should as a member of NATO. And everyone was like, yeah, man, we know that. Anyway, our adversary leaders is inherent in evil and resembles the devil. Yes, again, they're literally Nazis. All of them, everyone that's being bombed, they're all literally Nazis. We're freeing Ukraine from the Nazis. we're defending a noble cause, not a particular interest. Yes, they're saving the world, basically. They're saving the entire planet from the woke West. That's the tale that a lot of people actually believe. The enemy is purposely committing atrocities. If we are making mistakes, this happens without intention. It's all accidental. Oh, we bomb a school, we blow up, countless blocks of civilian houses. That's all just, that's because someone was hiding behind it. Other countries have done this before. Other countries are actively doing it. The idea of, they're hiding behind that hospital, so we're going to be blowing it up. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, if you don't, well, that's great. You'll be happy in that ignorance. The enemy makes use of illegal weapons. We suffer few losses. The enemy losses are considerable. Recognized intellectuals and artists support our cause. This is a good key point, because a lot of intellectuals, usually intellectuals supporting Russia, all of them are on the left. Anyone that has an ideology specifically, it is going to be far left Russian supporters. When you see this across South America, across Europe, anyone in Europe, it's particularly hard to be any kind of Russian supporter because it's kind of hitting close to home, So that kind of bullshit has a very much minimal effective range. It's kind of zero at this point. So other than a very die-hard commie left-winger saying, well, it's not entirely Russia's fault because, U.S. and NATO. Other than that, they're very careful with that. No one on the right in Europe is supporting Russia by any stretch of the imagination. Recognized intellectuals, in terms of public figures, many of the public figures have the interest that many people end up having when it comes down to money. A lot of these are bought, loyalties. Vladimir Putin is, according to Elon Musk himself, considerably, he used literally that word, considerably richer than he is. So the amount of money that man has at his disposal is pretty much the richest man on the planet. So you can buy loyalties of very well-known, recognized public figures when you have that budget. Our cause is sacred. Man, have we not seen this? You have the patriarch of the Orthodox Catholic Church in Russia, patriarch, the weird guy with a beard. Not only do you have the patriarch, you have the commie Argentine Pope, as commie as they come, supporting Russia as well, indirectly so, saying, well, NATO was expanding, so of course Russia had to defend himself. Whoever casts doubts on our propaganda helps the enemy is a traitor. So basically that's what you're looking at, and you really shouldn't be surprised by this. They're using the same elements that other dictators have used in the past. This photo is very much a good representation of this. This is not a made up photograph. It's not Photoshop. This is what's happening right now in Russia. They're using the Z as the symbol of their cause. In spite of all the atrocities they commit, they're just ignoring all. Just look somewhere else. There's always some excuse. Those dead bodies, they're actually moving. Oh, what? They're not moving? Okay, Ukrainians killed them. Oh, there's some other kind of excuse. Something has to be a perfect excuse other than what actually is. But this photograph, man, it just says so much. The idea how, we've gone from 1941, Germany, Nazi, and you know what? People in Nazi Germany, lots of them thought, well, this is all political. We're just defending ourselves. If we don't fight back now, we're going to be fighting them in our backyards. The same damn lies, the same damn propaganda that Russia is using right now. So the symbol, even having a symbol so as to unite, so as to rally behind that symbol. Now, I've done this video before, and some people in the comments said, you're exaggerating. Look at it now. Man, look at it now. If I wasn't right about the idea of using a symbol as something that blind cultist mentality of, oh yes, we're on the right, we're the good guys in this insanity that we're doing. Folks, keep this in mind, because you're being played like you obviously don't understand, and it's happening.
This is an economic transition moment. And you're right that, we start with the fact that we, the United States, did come back faster from this.
For all of this, what comes next? have this idea, Brian Moynihan, incredibly strong economy, consumption point.
Listen, pay attention to this. Open your mind and listen.
You have an incredibly strong economy. Consumers have more in their bank accounts. We heard from Brian Moynihan today from Bank of America. But you also have this idea where...
Do you understand now what propaganda is and how you're being played? Guys, it's going to be all for now. Remember, if you're interested in survival and preparedness, the economic aspect, surviving the economic collapse. Oh, the book's upside down. Street survival skills for the practical stuff and bugging out and relocating. These are available following the links below. Guys, take care. See you in the next video.